Today we're going to look at a compounding interest situation and look at how important it is to pay attention to the time interval that you have in your situation. So here's our problem. We're told that we're looking at a bank account with a monthly interest rate of 1%. And the initial balance in this account was $1,000, so the account started with $1,000. We're told that any interest we earn is going to be added to the account and no other deposits or withdrawals are made. So what we want to do is find the account balance for each time period listed below. Okay, so we've got 4 different time periods, but they're all going to start off with the same starting initial amount and the same interest rate. So if we look, our starting amount, our initial balance is $1,000. And our interest rate is 1%. And remember, we have to turn that 1% into a decimal to do these problems, and that's going to be 0.1. I'm sorry, 0.01 for 1%. Okay, all these problems are exponential growth because our interest is being added to our account. So you can see down here, I already have the formulas listed for every single problem. So in this situation, we want to look at 6 months. Okay, how much interest are we going to have after 6 months? Now we're told up here our interest is going to be compounded monthly. So that means if we're looking after 6 months, that's a time period of 6 intervals. Okay, interest is going to compound every month for 6 months. So we're going to take that, we're going to fill in this formula. Our initial amount is $1,000. Our interest rate is 0.01. And we have our time interval of 6. And I've got all this already plugged into my calculator, and we can see we get this big long decimal that after 6 months we would have $1,061 and this giant decimal. But remember, we're talking about money, so that money would get rounded just to be 52 cents. Okay, now here's where things get tricky. Okay, after 1 year, you might think, if you're not really focused on the time intervals, that our x value should be 1 because it says 1 year. But remember, we're talking about monthly interest, which means my time interval has to be listed in months. So 1 year is actually 12 months. And because 1 year is 12 months, that means my x value is actually going to be a 12. Okay, so same thing. We have our same initial balance. We have our same interest rate. This time, our time period, or our intervals, is going to be 12. And when we put it in the calculator, again, we get this giant decimal, which we're going to round. Now, look at this one. Okay, when we have this decimal, remember, money only has 2 decimal places. So even though we have all this after it, we have to look at this 5 and say, what's going to happen here? And we're going to round this up to 83 cents. Over here, okay, this was a 0, so that 2 didn't change at all. Okay, now let's look at this. After 2 years, remember, that doesn't mean x is a 2. If I put a 2 here, that represents 2 months. So we have to think about how many months is in 2 years. 2 years is 24 months, so that makes my x value a 24. So we take that equation, we put in our initial balance, we put in our rate, we put in our 24 months. We get this big decimal again. We're going to look at it right here. Oopsie. This 4 doesn't change the 3. So we get $1,269.73. And last but not least, after 5 years, 5 years is 60 months. So we're going to plug in our time period of 60 months. This one's a little bit tricky to round, okay? So we've got this big, long decimal. We know we're going to have $1,816, but this 69 cents, this 6 is going to make this 9 round up to the next whole number, which is 10. So instead of 69, we're actually going to have 70 cents. So remember, if your interest is given as a monthly interest rate, your time intervals have to be listed as months. If this had been an annual interest rate, that means we're talking about years, so then we would use the time intervals of years. You really have to pay attention to what your scenario tells you.